Depending on how closely you've been paying attention, you might have heard Democrats talk about getting rid of the Electoral College recently. And although they've been talking about it recently, that's not actually a recent idea. The Electoral College as a system has been pretty hotly debated for hundreds of years now. But before we get into the debate itself, dissecting the arguments, and talking about the pros and cons of having an Electoral College, I thought that it would be a better place to start to talk about what the Electoral College actually is. For some of you out there, you might have heard the name, but are not really sure what they do, how they vote, who's on the Electoral College, and how it came to be. Having a conceptual knowledge of all of those things will really help us better apply those facts to the arguments that we're seeing today. So we'll get into all of that right here, so don't go anywhere. I'm Ben Leach, and this is The Ben Leach Show. Before we get into today's video, I would like to thank today's video sponsor, Journey More. Congratulations, you have been selected to be this video sponsor. Yay! Seriously though, thank you so much for your support. It has been overwhelming. If you have time, you should definitely check out their channel. They put out some great outdoor content. They've been really good, close friends of mine for a long time. So check them out if you got some time. Anyway, let's get on with the video. So what is the Electoral College exactly? You might know a couple of things about it right now. Like, it isn't an actual college that you can graduate with a degree from. More seriously though, you might know the Electoral College as being the body of people that elects the president every time we have an election. But you might not know anything else about it. Your knowledge might end there. So this show is here to help you fill in those gaps. There are 538 members a part of the Electoral College. Now, how do we get that number? That number comes from the amount of senators that we have. We currently have 100. Each state gets 2. And we add that to the number of representatives that we have, 435. And then we add 3 because DC gets 3 electorates. That's how we get 538. That's also why we need 270 electoral votes to win. Because if you divide 538 by 2, you get 269. You need a majority to win. So that's why we have 270. Now, during this video, I'm going to be giving you a lot of information. I'm going to give you some numbers, maybe some dates. I don't want you to get lost in the weeds. This video is really simply to give you a good understanding of what the Electoral College actually is. Because it's very important, once we move on to the arguments surrounding it, that you have a really good grasp of what the organization is. So all to say, don't get lost in the numbers, it's okay. So let's keep going. So how does each state get electors? Well, it's pretty logical, flowing from how we get electors from each state. It's based on how many senators you have and how many representatives you have. So for example, Tennessee, you have 2 senators and 9 representatives. That means that you're going to get 11 electors. So that wasn't really too hard, was it? Now, who are these electors and how do they get chosen? How does this all work? All right, slow down. Okay, we're going to get into all those questions. I don't need to be so pushy. Okay. Each state chooses their own set of electors. So the Republican Party would get 11 electors to choose, and the Democratic Party would get 11 electors to choose. They choose this sometime before the election. Because 48 states are winner-take-all states, meaning whoever wins the popular vote in that state will win all of the electors for that state. That's why each party gets to choose their own set. Now, 2 states don't work this way, but I'm not going to talk about them in this video. I will probably make a smaller video describing why they're different, but I'm already giving you so much information, I don't want you to get lost. So just keep tracking with me. That's why we have 2 different sets of electors before the election. After November, whoever wins the popular vote, that party will get to send all of their electors to the Electoral College to meet. So, for example, if Trump wins Tennessee, then the Republicans will get to send all 11 of their candidates to the Electoral College to represent Tennessee. Now, how are these people actually chosen? That is a really good question. There really isn't any limitations on who can and can't be an elector, other than the fact that they cannot be currently serving federal either senators or House of Representative members. Typically, those people are selected by the party for really good work that they've done for the party. So if they've been a loyal supporter for years and years, if they've donated to campaigns, if they've organized rallies or organized fundraisers, they might receive recognition by getting to be a part of the electorate body that gets sent to the Electoral College. Now, all of these members are also put under a pledge to vote for that party's candidate. You might be asking, why are they asked to pledge? If they're a Republican, wouldn't they vote Republican? Or if they're Democrat, wouldn't they vote Democrat? Well, yes or no. There have been instances where people get sent to the Electoral College and they don't vote for the person that won the popular vote. Now, that doesn't mean that they switch parties and vote for the other side. Typically, we see that party will vote for someone else within their own party. So take 2016, for example. People didn't necessarily vote for Hillary Clinton, they would vote for Bernie Sanders. Or they didn't vote for Trump, they would vote for someone like Rand Paul or Ted Cruz. Now, these people are called faithless electors. That means that they didn't actually stick to what the Electoral College says about winner-take-all states. Now, this does have legal repercussions. They come with fines. Those people can have their ballot marked as invalid and replaced, but this is typically a rare occurrence. The instances that we've seen it in elections, very, very low numbers and low percentages of the electoral body as a whole. In fact, 2020, this year, the Supreme Court ruled that states can now require legally electors that are sent to the Electoral College to be bound to the popular vote candidate. Now, people have been making a really big deal about this, but just to simplify it, it just further reinforces the electoral system that we have currently right now. They should have been doing that anyway, so it's not forcing them to do something that is just totally out of the question, or doing something that totally changes the system. It doesn't. It just reinforces the system as it is. Now, one more fun fact about the Electoral College is that they vote after the election. So the president is not declared the winner after the November election. The electors will meet after in December. They meet on the Monday after the second Wednesday in December. What weird wording, but hey, the Constitution, am I right? That's when they meet and they cast their ballot for both the president and the vice president. Now, that was a lot of information that I just threw at you, but I'm going to dig in a little bit further, and this will be the last place that we go to talk about why the founders set up this system. This seems like a rather complex thing. Why didn't we go with national popular vote? Why do we have this system? That's an important question too. So let's get into it. So close your eyes. Imagine that you are in 1781 at the Constitutional Convention. What an historic time. You get to take part in framing the way this country will run for hundreds of years. Obviously, one question on everyone's mind was, how are we going to choose the president? How are we going to set up a succession of power that's democratic? Obviously, they have just gotten out from under the thumb of the British Empire, so hereditary succession was definitely out of the question. But obviously, with any democratic system, you're going to have disagreements. You had people that wanted to have the people choose the president, but they thought that perhaps that would lead to tyranny of the majority. They didn't want people to have more power than the states individually did. But they didn't also want the states to be able to vote the way that they wanted to without having the consent of the people. They discussed various methods other than direct election, like a lottery, seems pretty unpredictable. Also, perhaps having the governors of each state cast a ballot. That didn't really seem to work either. And maybe even the Congress could choose, but that also was pretty heavily contested. They didn't actually have a compromise until the very end of the convention, when someone discussed the possibility of having special electors that were chosen by the state, but also reflected the popular vote of each state. Now, even though that was an imperfect compromise, it allowed the majority of these delegations to agree that it would give states power in the election, that candidates couldn't simply just go to the highest population states or cities and campaign directly to them while ignoring other rural states and rural cities. They would really have to go to all of these places in order to win the entire state. And they wanted to make sure that they had enough states in order to win a majority of the electoral votes. That's why they chose the Electoral College. But that doesn't mean that it hadn't been hotly contested over the hundreds of years that we've had that system. In fact, there have been several times where that system didn't quite work the way that they thought it might. There were instances where neither candidate would get a majority of electors because of third parties picking up electors as well. In that case, Congress would have to decide. But what if Congress couldn't decide either? Who would handle disputes between Congress? The Supreme Court, in that case, would have to step in and settle disputes between Congress. This is all, again, a rather complex system. But overall, it has stood the test of time in that it has served to be a peaceful transition of power in all of the presidential elections that we've had thus far. And now that we have a really good understanding of what the Electoral College is and what it does, how it works, we can better handle the arguments that we're going to be seeing in our next video surrounding the pros and cons of the Electoral College and reasons that people want to get rid of it in lieu of a national popular vote. So there you go, that's our information. If you enjoyed this video, I hope that you will give this video a like, consider subscribing to the Ben Leach Show. I am on YouTube, Instagram, Parler as well, all at the Ben Leach Show. But links to those will be in the description of this video. As always, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your evening. This is the Ben Leach Show. Have a great day.